My fiancé said, "Sell your car and give my dad the money. He deserves it more than you." I replied, "Great. I'll sell something." She didn't realize I meant her spot in my will. When her dad asked why his name disappeared, the situation began in a place where nothing dramatic should ever happen. A quiet dinner table, a birthday cake still untouched, and a future father-in-law who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I had just handed him a modest gift, the kind of thing you give a man who never asks for anything. A classic pocket tool set. He thanked me, polite and reserved, and that should have been the end of it. Instead, my fiancée steered the night into something entirely different. I knew something was off the moment she leaned toward me with that firm, rehearsed posture. She waited until everyone was settled and then delivered a line she had clearly practiced in her head. She said I needed to sell my car and hand the money to her father because he deserved it more than I did. It landed in the room like an insult disguised as generosity. Her father's eyes widened, not with gratitude, but with something closer to alarm. I felt the shift under the table long before I processed the words. The bet formed instantly. If I pushed back, I risked being called selfish or uncooperative. If I agreed, I would be surrendering something I had spent a decade earning. A restored sedan I kept not because of vanity, but because it symbolized the one long-term project that hadn't let me down. And the question, the one I couldn't ignore, surfaced in my mind. Why did she want this so badly that she chose this moment to push it? I didn't confront her at the table. I let the silence run its course. Her father looked as if he wanted to say something, but swallowed it. Her mother tried to pretend she hadn't heard anything unusual. The entire night turned into a carefully balanced performance in which I played the part of a man who hadn't just been blindsided in front of his future in-laws. We drove home in a quiet that wasn't comfortable. The kind where every streetlight feels like a spotlight on a problem you're not ready to address. I replayed the scene over and over, realizing how quickly she had dismissed my attachment to the car. She framed it as selfishness. She framed it as failure to support the family. It felt forced, like someone pushing a script they didn't fully understand. 2 days later, the first odd detail appeared. I found her outside talking to a neighbor, a conversation that cut short when she noticed me. The neighbor, an older man who always greeted me warmly, avoided my eyes and retreated inside. When I asked her what that was about, she said she was asking him about his new mailbox. It was a flimsy answer. That neighbor hadn't changed anything on his property in months. The next evening, he caught me by the driveway and apologized for acting strange. He said he hadn't meant to get involved and immediately tried to retract the comment. That only made me push harder. Eventually, he muttered that he had seen her standing by my car with a man he didn't recognize. She was pointing at the vehicle in a way that didn't suggest admiration. He assumed it was harmless. Maybe she was talking about selling it, until he realized she had never mentioned selling anything before. He didn't want trouble, so he apologized again and left. That moment planted the first seed of distrust. She hadn't told me she'd been discussing my car with anyone. I didn't jump to conclusions, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Days before her sudden push for me to sell it, she had been outside with a stranger, talking about the same vehicle. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I listened. I paid attention to small changes in her behavior. She started staying late at work without explanation. She left her phone face down more often. She became unusually defensive about finances, telling me I needed to step up if we were going to build a future. She said it with the confidence of someone who had already decided what the next steps should be, regardless of what I wanted. The first real fracture came when I overheard her speaking on the phone one night while I walked past the hallway. She didn't know I was there. She told someone that I still didn't get it, and that she was running out of patience. It didn't sound like she was talking about ordinary relationship stress. It sounded like she was following a plan and waiting for me to comply. I didn't make a sound. I stood in the hallway and listened until she lowered her voice. When I walked into the room, she abruptly ended the call. She said it was a coworker asking about a shift change. I didn't accuse her of anything, but I watched her face carefully. She was lying. Not about calling someone, but about the nature of the conversation. The next day, her father called me privately. That alone was strange. He had never called me for anything. He asked if we could meet at a small cafe on the edge of town. When I arrived, he looked around like he didn't want to be seen with me. He began by apologizing. He didn't know what she had told me, but he insisted he had never asked me to sell my car or give him money. He said he didn't need anything from me. Then he said something that stuck in my mind. She had been acting off around him too, avoiding conversations, pushing certain topics, asking him to trust her on things he didn't understand. He said she had mentioned something about me, coming into money soon, and that he should stay close. He didn't know what she meant, and neither did I. I asked if he owed anyone money. He shook his head. He didn't understand any of this. When I left the cafe, the narrative changed completely. The version she had pitched, the one where her father desperately needed help, collapsed in minutes. The man she wanted me to give money to didn't even know he was being used as leverage. That night, I asked her again about the car. She became irritated, almost furious, not because I questioned her, but because I was supposed to follow instructions without hesitation. She accused me of not trusting her judgment. She said her father was too proud to admit he needed help. She pushed harder. She spoke faster. Her eyes darted away each time I asked for clarity. The shift became undeniable. Her insistence wasn't rooted in concern. It was rooted in urgency. She needed money quickly and needed it to come from something under my name. The final moment that closed part one landed quietly, but hit harder than any argument. I checked my bank account to pay a bill and noticed a small transfer I didn't recognize. Not theft, not large enough to be obvious, but unauthorized, just enough to test boundaries. I stared at the screen, feeling something cold settle in. Small transfers are rarely mistakes. They are trials. Someone checking what they can get away with before escalating. She came home an hour later humming like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, walked past me, and asked casually what we should cook for dinner. I watched her move around the kitchen as if she hadn't just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Part one ended when I made a silent decision at that table. She wanted me to sell something. She wanted me to sacrifice something meaningful. She wanted me to follow a plan that wasn't mine. She wanted control. Fine. I would sell something. But not my car. Not anything she expected. I would sell her spot in my will without telling her, and I would spend every second until the reveal figuring out why she needed that money so badly, and who she had been talking to. The next morning arrived with the kind of stillness that makes you feel like something is waiting to happen. I woke up before she did and sat in the living room replaying every moment from the last week, trying to understand the pattern forming underneath her behavior. It wasn't just pressure. It wasn't just entitlement. There was urgency behind her demands, as if a clock was ticking somewhere and I had no idea what deadline she was racing toward. She walked into the room wrapped in a towel, hair damp, speaking casually about her day as though nothing in our life had shifted. She talked about errands, groceries, and dinner plans. She sat on the arm of the sofa and laughed at something on her phone. If I hadn't been paying attention, I might have believed her performance. But every moment felt rehearsed, part of a strategy meant to keep me from asking questions. I didn't confront her about the bank transfer yet. I let her talk. I let her feel comfortable. It was better to observe her when she believed the ground was steady beneath her feet. Later in the day, she left for work. Or at least she said she did. About an hour later, I received a message from Sean, a mutual friend who had always stayed neutral in our relationship. He told me he saw her car parked outside a cafe on the opposite side of town. She wasn't alone. She was sitting with a man who looked too comfortable leaning toward her. Sean didn't describe the man, didn't guess anything, didn't judge. He simply said he thought I should know. I didn't drive there. I didn't storm inside. I didn't even ask Sean for more details. Instead, I called her father. I asked him to meet me again. This time he didn't hesitate. There was something heavy in his voice, as if he had been waiting for me to call. We met at the same quiet cafe, the kind of place where no one pays attention to anything. He looked tired, not physically, but emotionally worn out by something he didn't understand. He apologized again for the confusion about the car. He apologized for whatever she had dragged him into. He said he had been trying to talk to her, but she dodged him every time. Then he lowered his voice and told me something that changed the direction of everything that followed. A week earlier, she had shown him a document, a printed sheet that looked official. It claimed he owed money to someone with an aggressive reputation. It wasn't a small debt. It was enough to put fear into someone who lived quietly and avoided trouble. He panicked. He confronted her about it. She told him she had everything under control and that I would take care of it once things were in motion. She told him not to worry and not to ask questions. He asked her where the document came from. She avoided the question. He asked her who the lender was. She said it didn't matter. He asked her why she was making me pay something he supposedly owed. She told him it was the only way to keep the family stable. He said the fear kept him awake for nights until he finally compared the signature on that document to an old bank form he still had. The signature didn't match. The letterhead looked wrong. The format was strange. The numbers didn't align with anything he had ever signed in his life. She hadn't found a real debt. She had created one. That was the first full twist. Not that she was hiding something. Not that she wanted money. Not even that she was manipulating me. But that she had forged an entire financial thread against her own father to pressure me into giving her money disguised as help. He sat there in the cafe telling me this with shaking hands. He didn't know what to do. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want conflict. He just wanted his daughter to stop whatever scheme she was playing at and return to normal. I realized in that moment how deep her plan went. She hadn't acted impulsively. She had built a narrative, piece by piece, designed to steer me into a corner where selling the car seemed like the only reasonable option. And she used her own father's fear as leverage to force my compliance. This wasn't normal selfishness. This wasn't immaturity. It was strategy. I left the cafe with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Instead of confronting her emotionally, I handled the situation practically. I needed information. I needed to understand her end goal. And I needed protection. I scheduled a meeting with an attorney. Not for drama. Not for panic. For preparation. I wanted to know my vulnerabilities. I wanted to understand my legal boundaries. And I wanted to start undoing whatever she had quietly manipulated behind my back. The attorney listened carefully. He didn't react dramatically. He didn't tell me to leave her. He simply asked for details. When I mentioned the forged debt document, his expression changed slightly, not with surprise, but with recognition. He said the pattern reminded him of cases involving individuals who manipulate those closest to them to gain financial power. Then he said something I didn't expect. A month earlier, she had contacted his office asking hypothetical questions. She wanted to know how inheritance rights worked. She asked how engagement affected distribution. She asked what would happen if a fiancé passed unexpectedly. She asked about life insurance payouts. She asked about wills and automatic transfers. She had been preparing long before she ever pressured me to sell the car. She was trying to understand how much access she had to my assets and what barriers she would face if something happened to me. My attorney didn't know her intentions, but he advised me to secure everything immediately. I rewrote my will. Quietly. Efficiently. Permanently. She wasn't just removed. She was replaced entirely with a charity I genuinely supported. Her father, whom she insisted I include months earlier, was also removed so she couldn't manipulate him into claiming a share. The attorney executed the changes legally and thoroughly. The next twist hit the same day, in the form of a bank notification. Another unauthorized transfer attempt. Slightly larger than the previous one. She tested the water again. She was escalating. When she returned home that evening, she acted affectionate again. She hugged me longer than usual. She laughed louder. She cooked dinner with a sweetness that wasn't normal. It was the behavior of someone who believed their plan was on track. She believed the pressure was working. She believed I was close to breaking. But the facade cracked when I casually mentioned I had dropped by her father's house to return something he forgot in my car. She froze for half a second. It was small, but enough to expose the cracks spreading underneath her mask. She asked what we talked about. I didn't give specifics. I said he looked stressed and that I hoped everything was all right. She spent the rest of the night on edge, pacing more, checking her phone more often, stepping outside to make brief calls she thought I couldn't hear. Her urgency shifted into panic. She knew her father was losing his hold over the storyline she created. She knew I was getting too close to the truth. And then came the moment that launched the escalation into the next stage. While she slept, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message preview lit up the screen. I didn't touch her phone. I didn't unlock it. I didn't invade her privacy. I just read the preview. It said, "He's almost ready. Just keep pushing. Make sure he sells it before the end of the month." No name. No context. No explanation. But I knew exactly what it meant. And I knew someone else was in on this plan. Part 2 closed with the understanding that she wasn't just manipulating me. She was coordinating something. With someone. And she was running out of time. The message preview stayed burned into my thoughts the next morning. I woke up before she did again and sat at the kitchen table, replaying every detail until the pattern sharpened into something undeniable. She wasn't improvising. She wasn't reacting. She was executing a sequence. Someone else was guiding her, and before the end of the month wasn't a casual deadline. It carried the weight of something planned far in advance. She came downstairs cheerful and rested, unaware that a stranger's instruction had reached me before she could speak another practiced line. She kissed my cheek, brewed coffee, and talked about weekend plans as if nothing in our world was unstable. Her performance was smooth, but her eyes lacked the comfort of someone who truly believed her own narrative. She was waiting for something. Counting days. Measuring progress. I didn't argue. I didn't confront her. I let her talk and memorized the rhythm of her voice. People who lie in layers tend to trip when they realize their timeline is slipping. After she left, I headed to the garage and opened the hood of my car, not to fix anything, but to think. The engine had always been my escape when life got confusing. This time it wasn't comfort I needed. It was clarity. And clarity started with verifying what she had been doing near my vehicle the week before. I checked the car carefully. No scratches. No tampering. But the glove compartment latch was slightly misaligned, something I would have noticed if I had opened it earlier. I pressed it and found old inspection papers shuffled out of order. A receipt that wasn't mine sat at the bottom. A timestamp from 3 days before. Paid by card. The name on the receipt didn't belong to either of us. It belonged to a man named Edric, which wasn't a name I recognized. He had purchased 2 drinks and a pack of gum. That wasn't incriminating, but the location was. A cafe near the neighborhood where Sean saw my fiancée meeting a man. The connection wasn't solid yet, but it was enough to push me toward the next step. I called Sean again and asked him to describe the man. He said he wore an old leather jacket, had graying hair at the temples, and drove a car similar to mine, an older model sedan with the same body line. It wasn't the same exact vehicle, but close enough that someone obsessed with my car might see it as part of something bigger. When I heard that detail, the second twist began forming, but it didn't land until later that afternoon. Her father called me again, this time sounding distressed. He asked if I could stop by his house. When I arrived, he looked like he had aged 10 years in 1 week. He closed the door, lowered the blinds, and sat at the kitchen table like a man preparing a confession. He told me she visited him that morning and gave him a stern warning. She told him he needed to stay quiet, and if he didn't, she would expose something from years ago that could ruin his reputation. He refused to elaborate on what that was, but his fear was genuine. He said she wasn't acting like herself. He said she was desperate, cornered, pressured by something he didn't understand. Then he broke the last remaining piece of the original narrative. She had told him she was planning to give my car to someone as a gift. Not sell it, not donate it, give it to someone who needed it. He assumed it was charity. I knew better the moment he said it. The mystery man with the leather jacket. The cafe. The message telling her to push me harder. The urgency. She wasn't after the money from the sale. She wanted the car itself. And that meant she had promised it to someone. The second full twist struck in the middle of his kitchen. She had been seeing an older man for months, someone who admired my restored sedan, someone she wanted to impress, someone she wanted to secure. The car wasn't collateral. The car was currency. She planned to trade it, along with whatever money she squeezed from my accounts, to strengthen her position with him. The forged loan document, the pressure to sell, the urgency, it all aligned with a single motive. She wanted financial independence before leaving me, and she wanted the car as an offering to the man waiting for her to pull it off. Her father slumped in his chair, ashamed and confused. He said she wasn't listening to him anymore. She spoke to him like someone managing an obstacle rather than a parent. She had become cold and calculated, driven by something he couldn't identify. I asked him one question. Did she mention anything about my will? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. She had bragged weeks ago that everything would be sorted soon, and that he didn't need to worry about retirement. She hinted that I would take care of them once we were married. He assumed this meant she was planning to help him financially. He didn't realize she was referring to inheritance rights. She had plotted her exit long before she ever pressured me about the car. I left his house with the understanding that her plan was much larger than I initially realized. She wasn't just greedy. She was building an escape route, and she needed the car, my savings, and my future assets to secure her next life. That night, she sensed something shifting. She watched me more closely. She asked more questions about where I had gone. She brought up the car again with a softer tone, trying to sound reasonable. She said things about family loyalty, long-term planning, shared responsibility. Her performance was smoother than usual, but panic simmered beneath the surface. I didn't give her anything to work with. I told her I had errands the next day and went to bed early. She lay beside me staring at the ceiling long after I closed my eyes. The third escalation came the next morning when I found her sitting in my parked car in the garage, scrolling through her phone with the door slightly open. She jumped when she saw me. She said she was just checking something and quickly stepped out, slamming the door harder than she meant to. She had been checking the mileage. She needed to know if I had taken it somewhere without her knowledge. She needed to know if her timeline was slipping. I asked her casually what she was looking for in the car. She claimed she lost her earring. A weak explanation. Her eyes betrayed her, wide, startled, calculating. She left for work shortly after, though she headed in the opposite direction. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. The timeline was clear enough. Instead, I drove to my attorney's office again and scheduled something she would never anticipate. A meeting with her parents to review documents they should be aware of. Her father immediately agreed, almost relieved that someone was taking control of the situation. Her mother hesitated but eventually accepted. I told the attorney to prepare the updated will for disclosure, knowing full well it would detonate the rest of her plan the moment she realized she had lost the one thing she was counting on. The second she heard about that meeting, everything would unravel, and she would show exactly how far she was willing to go. Part 3 ended with her father calling me back urgently, saying she had learned about the upcoming meeting and reacted in a way that frightened him. She wasn't afraid of losing money. She was afraid of what her father might learn. And she wasn't running from consequences. She was running from exposure. Her father's voice told me everything before he explained a single detail. He sounded shaken, almost breathless, as if he had seen something unravel in front of him and didn't know how to react. He said she had shown up at his house the moment she learned there was a planned meeting. She hadn't just asked about it. She demanded to know what documents he expected to see. When he refused to tell her, she accused him of betraying her and warned him to keep his mouth shut if he wanted to avoid trouble. He tried to calm her, but she wasn't in a state where calming was possible. She left his house in a hurry, almost knocking down a lamp as she stormed through the hallway. He told me she was losing control, and he didn't know what she might do next. He asked me to be careful, and the fear in his voice wasn't exaggerated. He knew his daughter, but even he hadn't expected her to unravel this quickly. The meeting was scheduled for the next afternoon, giving me enough time to prepare for whatever fallout would follow. That morning she acted strangely attentive, hovering near me, watching me, almost trying to read my thoughts. She made me breakfast, asked about my day, and pretended to be invested in mundane details of my schedule. The timing was too perfect to be genuine. She wasn't trying to fix things. She was trying to intercept them. Before leaving the house, I intentionally left a folder on the kitchen counter, empty, just to see how she reacted. She stared at it longer than necessary, and when she thought I wasn't looking, she opened it. Seeing nothing inside didn't calm her. It made her more frantic. She asked why I had it. I said nothing important, just paperwork for errands. The way she watched me walk out the door felt like she was waiting for a key moment she could disrupt. She didn't know where the real meeting was happening. I arrived at the attorney's office early. Her parents were already there. Her father looked exhausted. Her mother looked confused, irritated, and worried all at once. She asked why any of this was necessary. I told her she deserved to know what her daughter had dragged me into. I didn't add emotion. I didn't add blame. I stuck to facts. When she arrived, late, tense, and trying to hide it, she stepped into the room with the composure of someone forcing herself through a performance she wasn't ready for. She sat beside her mother and crossed her arms tightly, waiting for the moment she thought she could still control. The attorney began by explaining that I had updated my will. Nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical, just a factual statement delivered with calm professionalism. Her father exhaled deeply, almost in relief that everything was finally coming to the surface. When the attorney handed the first page to her parents, her mother read it, frowned, and asked why their names were removed. Her father scanned the page and froze. His face fell. He turned to his daughter with disbelief. He asked her, in a low voice, why she told him he would be protected for life. He asked her why she told him I had already committed everything to them. He asked why she lied to him about us being legally married already, something she had apparently told him weeks ago. She snapped. She didn't deny it. She attacked instead. She said he shouldn't have talked to me. She said he wasn't supposed to see the paperwork. She said everything would have been fine if he had just trusted her. The panic in her voice wasn't subtle anymore. She sounded like someone watching the blueprint of her future catch fire. I told her parents the truth. The forged debt document, the fake signature, the pressure to sell the car, the unauthorized transfers, the cafe meetings, the man she had been seeing behind my back, the plan to gift him my car as part of her exit strategy. I didn't raise my voice or embellish anything. I laid out the details the same way I might describe steps in a process. Her father went pale. Her mother stared at her like she was looking at a stranger. She still tried to deny it. Then she tried to blame me. Then she tried to blame her father. Then finally, when every route closed, she broke down into a desperate plea that made no sense and solved nothing. That was when the third twist landed. Her father revealed something she never expected him to say aloud in front of me or the attorney. She had told him she had already named him as a secondary beneficiary on my life insurance policy. He assumed she was telling the truth because she had shown him a document with my name on it. He didn't understand the language in the document, but he trusted her. He believed she was trying to support him, but the policy she showed him was fake. She had fabricated it the same way she fabricated the debt. She had built a world of documents meant to manipulate everyone around her, and the moment real paperwork appeared on the table, her entire system collapsed. She tried to argue that I misunderstood her intentions, that she had been under stress, that everything got mixed up. She tried to pivot, but every explanation contradicted something else she had said minutes earlier. Her father stood up, trembling with anger, and told her she was no longer welcome at his house until she sought help. Her mother didn't speak. She stared at her daughter with hollow disappointment. The final blow came when the attorney explained that forging a debt to coerce money could be considered fraud. Her mother gasped. Her father stepped away from her. She stared at me with the recognition that every angle she had relied on was gone. When the meeting ended, she rushed after me in the parking lot. Her voice cracked as she tried to salvage something. She told me she could fix this, that we could move forward. She reached for my arm. I stepped out of reach. She asked if we could talk privately. I told her she would receive a formal notice ending the engagement, and she needed to collect her belongings by the end of the week. She switched from pleading to rage in seconds. She accused me of betrayal. She accused her father of sabotaging her. She accused everyone but herself. I walked to my car without responding. She screamed my name across the parking lot as if volume could reverse consequences. That night she returned to the house and found the locks changed. She pounded on the door until a neighbor came outside to check on the noise. When she realized she didn't have an audience who would take her side, she left. The consequences unfolded exactly the way reality tends to shape them: slow, steady, unemotional. Her father cut her off. Her mother refused to take her calls. The older man she had been seeing disappeared when he realized her manipulation extended far beyond infidelity. The forged loan document became a problem she couldn't explain to anyone. She attempted to claim emotional distress to justify her actions, but her own paperwork contradicted her story. And me? I sold her engagement ring and used the money to upgrade the engine in my car. The sedan she tried to weaponize became the clean break I needed. Months later, I saw her once at a grocery store. She froze. I didn't stop walking. The look on her face told me she finally understood what she had lost. She wanted me to sell something for her father. She didn't realize I meant something else entirely. I sold her place in my future.